Okay. Let's see, where were we? Right, we were looking through this. Alright. So, the BRM, which, if memory serves, I think BRM is a designation for a artillery observation vehicle. Although we do have this, the PRP, which may also be a designation for artillery observation vehicle, but I'm not entirely sure. We do have reactive armor, which, to be fair, does make it pretty tanky. And autocannon with, hang on, 120, 180. Out of curiosity, where is the Booker? One hundred, 180, 2.5, 3.8, 2.5, 3.8 versus 2.9, 4.3. Okay. But the Booker's autocannon seems to have slightly more ammunition. I think I'd still go with this, though. And you do also have the option of going with the 57mm gun with some ATGMs, but you're really hand-capping your visibility if you want the 57. So I think I just stick with the 2A72, all things considered. And then we have the T90M and Nikitka, which, if memory serves, Nikitka is actually a coating used to help mask a vehicle's thermal signature. And very good heat round. ATGM, or tube launched ATGM specifically. It's got less view range than the SEP V2 TUA. If you mount this though, the view range is the same. I still can't laze, which I find kind of interesting. And it's a touch more expensive now. And then you do also have the option of replacing the RWS with a cord. Or the PKT RWS with a cord. So. And then as for infantry, you've got Aegis 40s, which do actually use a 40mm grenade launcher. And the grenade launcher does appear to be bigger than the VDV Aegis 30s. Then we have your basic rifle squad with a pair of PKPs, some AK-12s, some GP-34s, and some of these disposable rocket launchers, which have very good pen. I'll give it that. 10 damage. I wonder, out of curiosity, what do the rocket launchers of the AT-4s here have? Lower damage and lower pen. And the supply weight's the same. Huh. That was the accuracy. But the round is larger. Okay. then you have these guys, which appear to basically be assault infantry, much like the engineers. Basically, the way they seem to have done combat engineers for the U.S. is like assault infantry. Russia, from my understanding, has more dedicated assault infantry than the U.S., and the developers seem to have gotten around that by just using the combat engineers as and kitting them out like assault infantry. So we've got 4 AK-12s, GP-34s, some shotguns, and flashbangs. And then you also have the option of swapping out. It says assault shield, even though none of these guys actually have a shield. You can give them 8 AK-12s, and they get an RPG-7 with a thermobaric rocket, which has decent performance. And a lot of ammunition, though. 12 rockets. And you do have more smoke grenades if you set them up like that. Or you get 2 RPG-7s. Okay. And then we have the manpads, the Furba. Okay. Next we have the vehicles. The B-10, which you can fit an active protection system onto, which is what these tubes, for lack of a better term, are. Is they're canisters for what I assume to be is something akin to a shotgun. And a shotgun like APS, or they might fire a miniature missile. But you've got like what, 16 in total? The downside to something like this compared to something like Iron Fist or Trophy is that these tubes are stationary. So if you have a rocket that's, say, coming from this side, this tube activates, then if you have another one, you don't necessarily have another. You're not guaranteed to have another tube in the right direction to destroy it. And yet, for some reason, the APS has more charges. And again, I suppose it has more charges in total than something like Trophy or Iron Fist. They're just in a much less convenient arrangement. And then we have the Boomerang. I don't know. I'm just gonna call it the BM module, which basically gives you a 2A42 and then a Cornet. Which again, 2 missiles per target. I wonder if that's designed. I really do wonder if that's designed to defeat APS. Because, I mean, it'd be a novel concept if it is, but you don't have any reloads for it, so. You then have this thing, which gives you a 57mm autocannon, which has lower pen, 75 to 150. That's only akin to a 30mm that the US can pull out. And the range is shorter too, 1000. Hang on. This thing, what was the range for the autocannon here? 1100. 57 by 348 versus, is it using a different ammunition? 37 APFSDS. Huh. Or HE. Okay, so I might be using a different ammunition. Still only have 4 cornets. And then you have the Bulat. And this, near as I can tell, is basically just a mini cornet. You've got 8 of these, 300 millimeters of pen, and that's intended, from the looks of it, for use against something like smaller vehicles or infantry. Shorter range than the regular cornets. I wonder if those holes are for are for water jets. Okay. I'd probably go with something like this, because with this it's not too expensive. Although if I didn't want the active protection system, 105. So cost is interesting. Also, can that gun really elevate? Doesn't look like it can. And you do have the coax PKT. And then we have the BMOT. This is, if memory serves, the BMO. It's basically a modified T-72 chassis. And this was the thing that was supposed to transport the before mentioned assault infantry that I brought up. Those infantry like that they'd generally be armed with things like thermobarics launchers or incendiary rocket launchers, and they'd be used for, well, assaults, and they would need to be transported in heavily armored transports like this. And this thing does in fact have near tank levels of protection. Not quite, but near. So you can throw on an ERA package to protect the sides if you were so inclined, but that's about it. And then it's like 15 total out of 75. Granted, I'm not entirely sure the, well, no, the ERA package does make you slightly tougher. And it does bulk out your side armor somewhat. It's just that the downside is that, well, there's a bench. The engine package adds a bench. I'm sorry, why is there a bench on the vehicle? It's like, it's right in the way of anyone trying to get out. Are they gonna have to dismount over the sides? Alright. And then you have the vaunted Terminator. Oh, people don't shut up about these things. Particularly the English-speaking pro-Russian fanboys. Basically, this is a tank support vehicle. So, long story short, after Russia's experience in places like Chechnya, and more specifically, or not Chechnya. Is it Chechnya? Is that where Grozny is? I'm not sure. Long story short, Russian armor got its butt handed to it by yeah, I think it was Chechnya. I think that was in I think that was that's where Grozny was. But basically, Russian armor got their butts handed to them by basically people firing down on the armored vehicles. Basically, people firing down on the armored vehicles from buildings and whatnot. And so Russia developed the concept for the BMPT as a tank support vehicle. And the idea is that this thing would, as the name implies, be able to support tanks in urban environments and provide protection against infantry, while also being armed with missiles to allow it to engage armored vehicles as well. Basically, what you're looking at here is something vaguely akin to a, I think this is technically a modified T-72 chassis. But basically, the idea is that for every one tank you would have in an urban environment, it would be supported by 2 of these. And then that ratio would be reversed in a in more open terrain. You'd have 2 tanks. You'd have 2 tanks supported by 1 of these. These things have shown up in Ukraine, and they honestly haven't done very much. Well, aside from explode, but then again, most everything does that in Ukraine. So, which is kind of interesting because if you're going to have a tank, like, generally, when it comes to supporting tanks, that's the job of the infantry. This is why you do combined arms. You have the infantry act as support for armored vehicles. And you use armored vehicles to support the infantry. So instead of just driving tanks down streets lined with buildings that you know rebels are in, this is why you send the infantry in to clear the buildings. And you wouldn't need something like this. That's not to say the concept is interesting, I just think the concept might be somewhat not very well thought out. The 9P162 Cornet T, which is a launcher for, oh wow. So apparently that thing, I'm guessing, is used to aim the Cornets. It's an autoloader, magazine time, reload time 5 seconds, 2 missiles per target, again. You have regular Cornets, or you have the thermobaric version. You can up armor it with a bunch of ERA, or you can go with whatever this is, which again, 2 missiles per target, multi-target. So does that mean that it fires? Oh, no, its own magazine's only 2 missiles. And they're much faster. So what? You have the option of firing 2 missiles per target. Or you have the option of firing either 2 missiles at a single target or engaging 2 separate targets? I don't know. That's not particularly clear. Huh. And then, wait, no. And then you have the oh so vaunted T-14. Yeah, because people won't shut up about how this thing's super revolutionary. I'd like to point out that honestly, anyone who thinks that a unmanned turret is incredibly revolutionary, I would advise them to look up something called the tank test bed, which was trialed in the 1980s, and then you'll find the concept is not revolutionary at all. Oh, I think it's booking it. That's an interesting arrangement for the APS. Or not APS, the RWS. What on earth are those? Are those supposed to be kind of like reloads for these things? I don't know. Or unless that's part of an active protection system that fires up to engage top attack munitions. You can up armor it, which amusingly increases the kinetic protection of the sides, but not the heat protection, and the heat protection of the front, but not the kinetic protection. Go figure. And then you've also got the top attack ATGM. For something that is honestly pretty expensive. I think I'd just go with the regular one, all things considered, try and at least save some cost. Is that where you're supposed to eject the casing for the spent shell? I saw something move. And then you have this, which is based off of some paint schemes that you can find, or pictures of IS-2s during World War II. And then we have the T-15, which already has a built-in APS. And again, more of those launchers. This is basically supposed to be for an IFV with tank levels of protection. And it's already pretty darn expensive out of the gate, $225. And then, oh wow, you can make it even more expensive if you want to slap on a 57. Wow. And, you only go down to these. So you trade in the Cornets for Atatkas. In exchange, you get a 57mm autocannon. Okay, that's interesting. Although at $290, it is very expensive. Huh. And then we have the T-80U, which is a much older machine, as you can probably tell by the performance of the different ammunition. T-80U, Oktober, Opposets 90, T-80UM, T-80UA, T-80UM2. The UM slightly up armors it, gives you an extra cord, notably. Looks for like it's with the loader's hatch. And that's about it. Oh, well, I mean, you do get a bit extra vision. The TUA gives you a jammer. I believe that's like, is that a Shorta? Basically, it's an optimal. It's a soft kill active protection system. It's designed to confuse the guidance of an incoming missile, like heck, what's it pronounced? Scalos? Like the TOW. You've got like you've got manually guided missiles, which it basically involves the shooter manually guiding the missile in with a little joystick. And then you have, I believe it's called Scalos. I forget the name of the manually guided system. It's like Malos or I don't know how to pronounce it. And then you have the other kind, like TOW or the Melts, Faggot, Cornet, and whatnot, which have and Conkers, which use a Scalos guidance mechanism, which is basically just where the operator looks through the guidance system, puts the crosshair on the target, and keeps the crosshair there until the missile hits. And the system itself does the actual guiding, rather than the operator having to use a tiny joystick to try and manually fly the missile all the way to the target. Jammers like Shorta are intended, ideally, to mess up the guidance system for that. Because basically what it does is you have the crosshair is put on the target. The missile it basically has an IR flare on the back of it. And then the guidance system cross-references where the missile is with where the target is and tries to correct. And these are supposed to mess with that IR tracking. And then you have a version with an APS. And these APSs were actually used during I believe it was Afghanistan. Although one thing I find interesting is that when you actually put a hard kill APS, it nerfs the it nerfs everything back down to the Opperzets 90 version. So the T80UA might be better, or just the T80UM if you want something that's decently cheap and you don't mind not having jammer. T90, a basic T90, which is even cheaper, interestingly enough. 325 to 520. Hang on a second. 325 to 520 versus 350 to 5. Wow, that is bad. That is really bad. And you also, I mean, you've got Contact 5 that you can see on here, which is basically like a sort of heavy ERA system designed to be useful against Sabot rounds or other kinetic energy penetrators as well. Heat. You already have an active protection system out of the box for the Opperzets 92. You can get the Opperzets 2006 variant, which gives you better armor, kind of better ammunition. It's still not great. And then you have the T90M, which is the latest version of the T90 that is actually in Russian service. And you get additional ERA for the sides to offer better protection, which apparently makes it the T90M Opperzets 2017. You have an option for an arena APS, which I mean, those look like sensor boxes, but where's the actual launchers? It's not these. These are smoke grenades, I think. Huh. And you've got this mesh curtain below the turret ring. Which is not on the original one. Also, they've completely covered the bustle. I have no idea how this active protection system is designed to work, but okay. Or you can have the ERA and the APS. And then a weapons package just to replace the cord with a, or replace the PKT with a cord. For a decently durable machine. Huh. Alright. I mean, the T-90Ms are still capable. It's worth noting. Sure, they're not T-14s, and that's probably a good thing, but they are still usable. And they are, basically, they should be respected. If anything from the Ukraine battlefield can tell us is that these machines are not particularly sucky. It is a newly designed turret, though. And apparently it has a bustle. You know, if that wasn't evident enough. Is that supposed to be the, is that supposed to be part of the APS? These boxes here? I mean, they might be. Huh. Alright. And then we have support. The 2S-19 Mosta, which is a subpropelled howitzer, I think on a T-72 chassis? I don't think that's a T-80 chassis. No, I'm pretty sure that's like a T-72 chassis. Or something akin to it. What do we have here? 152mm howitzer, decent-ish range. You also have the Mosta M2, which 12, 90, 240, 180, 75. 12, 90, 280, 210, 75. Makes it slightly more accurate and gives you access to Krasnopol, which is a guided round, and reduces the reload time somewhat. But that, basically, that appears to be it. And for 30 extra points? I mean, it doesn't really do much to the ammunition stock. Short of, again, giving you Krasnopol, so it's got to rearrange it just a touch. Well, I don't know. I'm honestly not sure that's worth it. Sure, it makes it more accurate, but it doesn't make it longer ranged. And then you have the 2S-31 Vena, which I think is a sort of, well, it's a 120mm gun / mortar on a BMP-3 chassis. And it's kind of like the 2S, what is it, 2S9 from the VDV? Yeah, the 2S9, but on a different hull, on a BMP-3 hull. Alright, you do have an extended range option. That's about all you really got. And then let me check these. But yeah, it's basically it's a 120mm mortar. What is that thing? I have no idea what that tube-like thing is. And then you have the 2S-35 Kolizia. And again, this is another one of those vaunted super weapons. Is that using the same chassis as the... Is that using the same chassis as the, It might be using the same chassis as the Mazda. T80, T90, no. It's not using a T14 chassis because that has 7 road wheels. This also has 7 road wheels. This has 7 road wheels, but they're much smaller. Also, it looks like the tracks aren't particularly well tensioned. Kolizia. The Kolizia is another one of those vaunted Russian quasi-super weapons. And sure, the gun has some decent range to it, but... Like I said, it's one of those vaunted Russian quasi-super weapons. Cluster rounds, or extended range rounds with Krasnov pull that fly out even further. We do have decent ammunition. But for $250 a piece for this thing, okay, let's just do a comparison here. If you have the Iron Thunder, and let's up armor it too, because why not? It is going to be 30 points less. It has about the same protection, slightly more health, same mobility, visibility, everything like that. It's slightly lighter, interestingly enough. And it can shoot farther, reload slightly slower, and has less ammunition. Oh yeah, and it's more accurate. Although the shells do cost more supplies. Okay. And yeah, you only have access to one type of shell. Although to be fair, Krasnopol is more accurate than the base aim, or than the XM1155. But the only thing you're firing out of this is XM1155. You only got 12 rounds of Krasnopol here. So, I'm not sure why it's so expensive. But, okay. Like, whatever. And then, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. It looks like it's on a BMP-3 chassis. 57mm autocannon. With a very long range against aircraft. You know, I kind of wish they treat low and high altitude gun ranges similar to the way they treat things like short range air-to-air missiles. And that the gun has less range at high altitude than it does at low altitude. I think that would make more sense. And this goes for everything. So, including the this would go for everything, including the vehicles like the LAV-80, the M-SHORAD, and whatnot. Or you can fit the Cessna for missiles, multi-targets, and you can apparently fire them on the move. Alright. Only one missile per target, though. You can fire this on the move, too. And it has smoke. The Cessna does not have smoke. Well, I could definitely see how this would be a bane to something like helicopters. And it doesn't have radar, interestingly enough. The MTSM, which is kind of amusing because during the the November 2024 beta, this specialization did not have any, any logistics vehicles whatsoever. So it was entirely reliant on whatever specialization you pair it with. And then they added this thing. So, compared to the M543, which carries less, Buckham is amphibious, and does have a self-defense weapon. I'm just curious about these comparisons. The S300 V4 Anti, yeah. And then the radar rises up. There it is. I was starting to think that I wasn't going to. This is basically, it's a large anti-ballistic missile system, I believe. That's what the S300 V4 was designed for, is as an anti-ballistic missile system. But the, compared to the regular S400. But you also have these, which are even bigger. And you can apparently engage 2 targets at once. They have an even longer range. They're semi-active though, which means you have to guide them in all the way to the target. Are these semi-active? They are semi-active. For a very long-range system, that's actually pretty cheap, all things considered. Huh. I think I already checked those 2 out. I mean, if you do decide to pair this with the S400 from the motor rifles specialization, you could reasonably go with the 9M82MDs versus the 9M83Ms. The 2 missiles rather than the 4 missiles. In fact, we have yet to get there, but if memory serves, you get an upgrade for the S400 and the motor rifles. If you decide not to go for that, this might be a good option to have that extra bit of range. And then you have Tor, which Tor, if memory serves, was designed basically to protect Russian armored vehicle columns. And you can apparently fire this thing on the move, which is interesting because if memory serves, Tor can't do that in real life. You also have the option to go with 16 missiles. And it does have radar. Like I said, the option to fire on the move is kind of interesting. The vehicle has, from my understanding, the vehicle has to briefly stop in order to fire. But you can still, you don't have to stop for very long. I think the total elapsed time is like less than 20 seconds. Multi-target 2. The missiles don't seem to change, aside from getting a slightly bit more altitude, slightly longer high altitude range. They're more expensive and they're slightly faster. That's about it, though. And then we have the TOS one. Not the TOS 1A, just the TOS 1. You can fit it out with Contact 5 if you were so inclined to try and increase its survivability, which you're probably going to want to do because big rocket launcher. It is a thermobaric launcher. So you've got legs, which I'm guessing is supposed to support it for the firing of the thermobarics. Then you have the TOS 1A, which increases the range of the rockets. Makes the rockets slightly more expensive, but also reduces the accuracy by virtue of that you're slinging the rockets farther.